Thank you. Thank you, Juice Conference, and Donna McNeil for inviting me up here to talk about myself. What more could a guy want, right? I'm an artist. I deal in love, and I go where I'm loved. So, hello, Camden. 4 years ago, I was sitting in my studio, and I was thinking about the kind of conversations I was having with my friends. And one thing I noticed about the conversations I was having was how quickly they turned unsettled. And it didn't seem, whatever we talked about, it moved very quickly into a kind of anxiety or a kind of uncertainty. You know, you talk about going out into the woods, taking a nice walk in the woods, and somebody's anxious they're going to see a dead crow, and West Nile fever is going to be in the area, and that kind of thing. Or you sit down to break bread with your friend, someone's got a gluten issue. It's wherever we looked, it seemed like everything had become toxic. And so I was thinking, if I were describing these same symptoms to my therapist, she would say, you're suffering an identity crisis. You're off-center, and because you're off-center, you don't know what your strengths are, you're not confident in your strengths. And so the future is terrifying, because you don't know how you're going to be able to deal with it. So I was thinking, okay, so let's say America's having an identity crisis. It's not the reflex of Americans to turn to their artists and say, we're having some problems we need to find a language for that we can share. We need to find experiences that we can share that express the kinds of feelings we feel we're dealing with privately or in isolation. And so I thought, I know an awful lot of artists, an awful lot of great artists. If America's not going to ask us, I'll ask us. And so that's what I did. I thought, let's ask artists to create works of art specifically about America. I said, let's do it post 9/11, not necessarily focusing on the events of 9/11, but simply the time from then till now, because the time from then to 9/11 seemed to crystallize something that had been moving through America for a while. And I think was the tragic event that really did throw us off our axis. So I reached out. It was not a curated show. It's a shout out to friends. The idea being that these artists would make works of art specifically about America. I thought, what we need to do is to take art outside of the context of the art world, which has become very isolated, and to see if we can sort of move it back into the center of the culture. And I thought the way to do this would be to put them on trucks and send these trucks around to small towns, mid-sized cities, inner cities, to communities that are marginalized either geographically or economically or whatnot. So that was the initial impulse, and the response from the art world was fantastic. But let me go back a little bit to before I had the idea for America Now and Here. I think probably the impetus for my idea came from The Tumbling Woman, which is a sculpture I made as my response to the tragedy of 9/11. And I made it and installed it in Rockefeller Center on the first anniversary of 9/11. And it created a firestorm of protest and outrage, and was immediately covered up and moved away. Now, I think what we have to think about 9/11 is that it was a very surreal experience. Besides being a profound tragedy, it was surreal because the one thing that was different than other tragedies was that 3,000 people died and we saw no bodies. And the conversation quickly turned from the tragedy of loss of life to the tragedy of the loss of architecture. And our mourning process was all about, architecture, either rebuilding or memorializing it or saving the footprints or declaring sacred ground, et cetera, et cetera. But in the midst of, in amongst all of this was the fact that 3,000 lives had been lost. And when I created this piece, it was to remember the human tragedy, not the architectural one. But because it deals with the one image that I think terrified all of us, which was the people who leapt or jumped from the buildings, it was something that we couldn't face at the time. The thing about the people jumping was that it showed us how profoundly tragic this thing was for people to have to choose one form of death over another. Anyway, that's the thing that made me feel, okay, if art is that removed from the culture that we cannot deal with the profound and real tragedies through the expression of the body, through the expression of the human, then art has moved too far away from the culture for me to tolerate. This is the piece that I did for the America Now and Here, and it's called Samaritan. It's hard to see in the slide, but the person who's helping the wounded person is also wounded, is missing a hand. And I was thinking of it as the wounded helping the wounded, which is, I think, at the center of the spirit of America Now and Here. Now, when I asked the artists to participate in this, I'm asking a lot of very well-known artists. And I'm not going to tell them what to do. I just said something about America. So I had no idea what would come back. And, artists can be rather nasty or cynical or, screw you kind of thing. I'm thinking, God, I hope they don't do that. Actually, what came back was something that was actually self-organizing. It seemed like artists were focusing on America either as icon, as a sense of place, or as people. And the work kind of fit nicely into these three broad themes that explored a lot of different variations within that. Whether the iconic America could be put forward with pride, or whether it was felt vulnerable. Sense of place was looking at places, landscape people loved that gave them a grounded sense, or that used landscape to talk about the other forces that are within our spirit, our emotions and psychology. Or looking at people as a search for identity, or a sense of community, a sense of family or friendship, fit into those. This is the poets. 54 of America's great poets collaborated on one poem. This is a little preview of the film we made of each of the poets who recited their 10 lines. It was like a chain letter.
Beginning of October, maples kindle in the east. Linked to fire season in the west by what? 4 time zones, oceans of prairies, rocky precincts. Air, turbulence, ice melt, ozone ranges. Air held his breath, says Lincoln in his poem. Stealthily, at night, he stole away to hear a madman singing. What live or lethal or great or insane flows linking air to air or song to song?
Shirt-sleeved afternoons turn toward leather as the trees blush, scatter a last few bright, weary wisps across the great bruised heart of the South. The spirit cup drifts down the pond's moon-sparked highway. Far laughter, shadows. Love or poison? Your turn. Drink to the star-drenched latitudes.
Oh, well, along the coast in grainy April, forgiveness is the blue sheen of lupin on a windy hillside. The grasses stating their case for and against the continent's violet requiem. The ear turning as a renga turns toward its source. Rivery, many-voiced. But what source, really, in the turning? So the hikers who have waded through wildflowers to the cliff's edge unpack their lunches and stare at the Pacific.
So, this is what you have to dig about that. When I was talking to some poet friends of mine about America Now and Here, they wanted to participate. I said, well, how are you going to participate in this truck thing? And they came up with the idea of the renga, which is a Japanese, traditional, ancient Japanese conversational form. Each poet writes 10 lines. One poet starts it, the next responds, the next responds. So 54 of America's great poets did something that has never been done before. They all collaborated on one poem about America. And this, you saw 3 of them. What was fortuitous about it was because they had 3 minutes to, 3 days, to write. I've got 3 minutes. They had 3 days to write their thing. We had to schedule them, and Robert Pinsky was the first to start. He starts, he's in Massachusetts, so he begins it on the Atlantic coast. 54 poets later, coincidentally, Robert Haas is looking out over the Pacific. In between, it goes all over the place. As you see Rita Dove talking from New Orleans. It just moves through the country. Excuse me. It's a profound American experience. I then was talking to playwright friends of mine, and they wanted to participate too. I said, how are you going to do that? And they said, well, we'll write these 3-minute dialogues, like conversations overheard. And we'll perform them in the trucks, in the exhibition, unannounced. They'll just spontaneously crop up, people will turn their attention to them, then we'll disappear into the audience, etc. And so they did. 20 American playwrights have written little 3-minute dialogues for us. Musicians gave us, singer-songwriters gave us songs that they either wrote specifically for us or ones that they felt were appropriate to the theme of the show. And finally, Tribeca Film Festival and Sundance Film Festival both gave us 2 90-minute short film programs that a show like a drive-in. People come and bring their chairs, sit around, and watch the movies. And so that's sort of the texture of and complexion of the project. What we do is we go into towns, as you saw in the movie, the first movie to start it, and we connect with local talent there who come up with their version of the work that we're bringing with us. So in Kansas City, 30 poets wrote the Kansas City Renga. We had 10 filmmakers. We had several playwrights, several artists, visual artists, etc., who all working within the themes of America Now and Here, collaborated on that. And then we did all these programs. What you're looking at here is one in which we got kids to come in, write a poem, and then turn it into a rap song. These are photos of the actors performing one of the dialogues. We did programs on creative aging, and obviously every chance we got tried to engage the kids in some kind of response. It's a flash, what do they call them? Flash mob. I'm learning so much. Anyway, these are places that have expressed an interest in us coming to them. We're in the process now of putting this whole thing together. The Kansas City was a pilot program to demonstrate how this thing actually works, and what we're hoping to do is to raise enough money and have the partner regions that we want to go to be able to raise enough money that we can move this thing throughout the country. I think as a model for using art, and this is something to emphasize because all the docents were told not to talk about art. They were told to use the art to talk about us. Find ways through the work that's there to get the people looking at it to talk about these things that mean a lot to all of us and that we share, but are evoked by the images or the language or the experience that the art provides, which is the place that art functions best, and it is what works about art. So I'll end with this.
Get blocked.
Thank you. Thank you.